Hi, my loves, and welcome back to I'm On Your Side with me, your host, Sierra Boudreau. Happy Sunday, or whatever day it is you guys are listening to this. Happy 2025, you guys. I just saw this thing on Instagram. Somebody reposted it, and it was like, damn, we've got next year tomorrow, which feels so true. It feels like as we get into a new year, we kind of look at it as a whole rather than just like, oh, we have January, or oh, we simply have tomorrow. It's like, oh, we have all of next year tomorrow. It just feels like a really big deal. And I am in the camp that loves the new year, not even necessarily so I can reinvent and change my entire life. It's not about that. It's just about like a fresh start. It feels new. It feels chic. It feels exciting. It feels like something fun is going on. And so happy January. If you guys had the best year of your life last year, love that for you. Hopefully this year is better. If you guys had the worst year of your life last year, hate that. Hope this year is better. If you were somewhere in between, well, we'll see how it goes. But seeing mixed messages on people saying they had the best year or the worst year, which obviously we all are part of the human experience. Some people are going to have a great time. Some people are going to have an awful time. It's all circumstantial. That said, I think that it is really hard to get online and see so many people being like, 2024 was the best year of my life. I accomplished all these things. I made all these changes. I completely revamped my entire everything. Nothing bad happened to me. While you're in the midst of a really hard time or have experienced maybe one of the most soul-crushing years you've ever experienced, like that can be really hard. And even if you had a really good year or just an average year, seeing so many people talk about how it was incredible for them can be hard because then you want to compare yourself, right? Oh, they did all these things and I thought I had a great year, but I only did a fraction of those things. Or they did all these things that I wanted to do, but I didn't accomplish. And even though I felt good about what I ended up doing throughout the year, I feel like I didn't do enough now. That can be really, really challenging. And I do want to remind you that people oftentimes are only sharing the highlight reels of their year, right? No one's going online and doing a photo dump of every time they cried throughout the year. Like no one's doing that. People are posting the happy stuff, the exciting stuff. And I love seeing people's highlights. I love seeing all the joy that people have gotten to experience this year or last year, I guess. Like that is really, really fun. And also it's important to remember that the highlight reel of someone's life is not the reality of their life. Like we talked about last week, the reality of their social media is not always the reality of their life. And so if you have been finding yourself in this comparison cycle and you're getting online and you're seeing all these people celebrating and you're like, oh, well, I was celebrating and now I kind of feel like shit, or I was having a really awful time and now I feel even worse about it, remind yourself that you don't know the full picture, right? And if you did have a genuinely really hard year, allow yourself to sit in that reality, which goes hand in hand and something that I want to talk to you guys about this week that I uncovered about myself last night, something that I didn't even realize I was doing that I think a lot of us do, especially in the age of people manifesting, people believing the best, people only wanting and expecting good things to happen to them, right? I think that there's kind of a negative side to that coin that I didn't even realize I was experiencing so deeply until last night. I finally took the time to sit there with everything that had gone on in the year and just everything that I had done, everything that I learned about myself and known about myself and saw exactly what I'm going to talk to you guys about. But my 2024 was incredible. I experienced so much more abundance in every facet than I even thought to ask for at the end of 2023. And while I'm so grateful for that, I also realized that I have done a really bad job at actually getting to know myself, actually getting to show up to myself. While last year was incredible for me, last episode was all about just kind of like the butterfly effect of 2024, everything that I had learned and gone through and experienced and how it led me to where I am now. And I'm so thankful for everything that happened in 2024. But the reality of that, right, is like I'm so thankful for all the good stuff that happened because any negative emotion I had in 2024, any negative feeling, any negative experience, I pushed to the side and told myself to not deal with it, to not process it, because if I spent any time focused on it or sitting in it, then I'm going to be magnifying it. And I think that's the negative side of the language that's kind of going around the internet right now. You know, only focus on the good, only focus on the positive. If you feel positive things, if you look for positive things, more will be coming to you. All that is true. I think we do ourselves a really big disservice by ignoring half of the human experience, right? There's so much that happens within our year, within our days that isn't super pleasant, that isn't super exciting, that isn't what we would would want. Instead of actually sitting with those emotions and listening to what those feelings are trying to tell us, we push them away and we suppress them. And we are only sitting with the good. And I just realized I don't actually know myself very deeply. I know who I am in joy. I know who I am in abundance. I know who I am in gratitude. I know who I am when things are working out for me. But the minute I'm experiencing a negative emotion, a negative feeling, something negative happens, I push that away and I suppress all of that because I have convinced myself if I spend any time sitting in it, resting in it, letting those emotions and feelings and experiences tell me something, then I am highlighting it, I am putting it on a pedestal, and I am attracting more in. And that is not true. And it has done me such a disservice because I look back on last year and I can only really think of all of the positive stuff. And you may think that's great. You only want to think about the positive stuff. You only want to see the highlights. But that's not really true, right? Because I think that there is so much goodness to be extracted from the negativity. If only I'd allowed myself to really sit with it and experience it. If only I'd allowed myself to listen to it. I wrote something last night that encapsulates everything that I just said into this very messy, very poorly edited, I don't know what to call soliloquy, I guess. Can I use soliloquy in this? It's really just a rambling, but I'm going to share it with you because one, it contributes to the theme of the episode, and two, but I think that as I share this, there's going to be quite a few of you who are going to realize you've been doing the same thing, and maybe this can be a realization for all of us to work through. So it says, I had the best year of my life, and I feel like I can't even meet myself deeply enough to process it, and I don't know why. I feel like an old friend that you catch up with after a long time apart, only to realize you don't have much to say, but it's myself, so we can't have grown apart. I think about myself constantly, but I think about myself through the context of other people. How do they see me? Do they believe me? Do they want me around? Do I want them around? Well, it doesn't really matter if I want them around if they don't want me around. Maybe I should isolate myself. Maybe I should put myself out there. Did nobody notice my new aesthetic? Telling people stories about how they're going to be fine, when in reality, how much they believe it depends on how much I like myself, and I like myself more when they believe me. I don't know how much is true, or if I'm just trying to make sense of a catalog of emotions I've only scratched the surface of. I feel like I struggled this year with telling myself the truth. Maybe part of the truth is how it scares me that the end of December and the beginning of January feel like they exist on different timelines. And Alex has given me such long rope to change, but I fear that rope is going to run out, even though he's given no indication of that to be the case. I'm afraid to say these things out loud because if I say them out loud, then that would make it true. But I don't know if I believe that either. It's almost as if I'm afraid. And I thought I had more to say on that sentence, but I don't think I do. It's almost as if I am afraid. Being afraid feels like a sign of weakness that I can't admit to myself or others, so the almost is a security blanket bestowed upon me like a light reminder that I am capable of my own destiny, or whatever I heard on TikTok this week. I know the brain searches for reasons to affirm subconscious thoughts. I train myself to see only the good, only the positive, only the better, and I do believe I am better for it, but I believe that in only allowing the positive thoughts to consume me, I am missing out on half of the reality of being alive. I criticize myself when I have negative thoughts, and I push myself away while repeating sadness doesn't live here. When sadness creeps up, begging to be noticed and nurtured, I snarl and bare my teeth in disdain until it tucks itself away amongst other things I refuse to face. It is not meeting yourself deeply if you only pay attention to yourself when you're happy. And I believe that began as an act of self-preservation, but it's now self-indulgence steeped in a toxic positivity learned by years of consuming to create instead of to notice. Florence and the Machine has a song called No Choir, and it talks about how when you're in the best parts of your life, there's not much to say about it. And I feel like that most of the time, but it's only tonight that I realize there's even less to say when you don't allow yourself to feel half of the human experience. It's like admitting that I'm sad sometimes is a smear across the life that I built. I preach about the duality, but only the duality between the good and the better, never the isolated amongst the content. And I don't know that I've done myself a great service, but I do know that I've tried to. And I do think that as I sit here on the cusp of 2025, I will allow that to be enough without circling back to put on a bright red bow before I present it to you for approval. I wrote that and it felt genuinely like a sigh of relief, like for the first time all year, the first time in a really long time, I've allowed myself to acknowledge that I have gone through hard moments this year, and not acknowledging a hard moment for the sake of repackaging it and making it pretty and making it neat and presenting it to my audience so that they can understand that sometimes I go through hard stuff too, but actually sitting with the reality of like some shit really sucked. And instead of facing that and instead of acknowledging that and seeing what it was trying to tell me when those emotions arose, I've just tucked them away and I've told them that they do not belong here. They don't live here. And while it's true that my sadness, my anxiety, my desperation, my my loneliness does not live in me, I've also told it that it cannot even arise. It can't even show up. It can't even be noticed. And when those emotions that are part of me have creeped up, instead of nurturing that and sitting with that and being patient with that, I've pushed it away and I've snarled at it and I've told it that it doesn't have a place within me. It doesn't have a place to exist. And I mentioned how I only talk about duality when it comes to the good and the better, but not duality when it comes to the content and also the isolated, the joyous and also the confused, the aggravated but also the peaceful, as if those things can't exist at the same time. And they can. But in only focusing on the goodness of it all, I have really shorted myself so much of the experience of last year. And I've been asking myself since last night, like, why am I so afraid of being sad? And it's almost as if I bring it to the surface and I actually work through it, then that's a part of me that I'm losing. It's almost as if any darkness that I've carried within me is like a security blanket that I can always retreat to if I need something comforting, if I need something stable, if I need something to go back to that reminds me that I am still the person that I was a couple of years ago. And I say that because I've changed so much in the recent years. Like, I say that because I've changed so much in recent years. And it scares me a little bit because I think I wonder, how much can I change? How much can I evolve before the people that I love, that have known me for a really long time, start to feel as if I am too different. I am too far from who they agreed to love. And then I have to remind myself that when you love someone, it's an active choice. Loving someone isn't really the feeling. And then it dawned on me also that saying you can't love other people if you don't love yourself, like, I really struggled with that for a long time. And then I realized how true that is, because love is not the feeling. The feeling is infatuation. The feeling is excitement. The feeling is being enthralled. The feeling is being captivated. Those are some of the feelings that make up love. But love is the choice. Love is the verb. Love is not the emotion we attach to it. When you love someone, you're agreeing to choose them. You're agreeing to show up to and for them, even when it's difficult, even when you don't want to. And if you can't do that for yourself, you are not going to want to do that for other people. If you can't look at yourself and say, I know you're going through a hard time and I'm going to sit with you in it. If you can't look at yourself and say, I want better for you, and so I'm going to choose better for you, I believe that you are bigger than your mistakes. And so I am not going to continue throwing shame and guilt upon you anytime I am frustrated. I believe that you are worth the effort. I believe that you are worth the intention. If you can't say that to yourself, if you can't love yourself actively, it is going to be incredibly difficult to do that for other people. I would even say impossible, because you don't have practice. And the best place to practice is with yourself. We have reduced love to the feeling of it all and not the work of it all. Loving someone is work. Loving yourself is work. And when you do the work for yourself, the difficult but necessary work for yourself, it becomes exponentially easier to do that for other people, right? And I didn't realize that for so long. I didn't realize that's what I'd been doing, that by loving myself, I've been doing the work for myself. And that's when my relationships got so much better, right? That's when I found Alex, the love of my life. That's when I was able to deepen relationships that I have with my friends, with my community. When I began to actually choose myself, I started to find so much more joy in choosing other people. But it was really hard in the times that I couldn't do that for myself to do that for others. And I don't think that choosing to love yourself first is selfish. And yes, you do deserve love, whether or not you are in the place to love yourself. You do deserve that. You are not going to be the partner, the friend, the relationship builder that you want to be if you can't be that for yourself. So that said, in 2024, when I was refusing to meet myself deeply, because meeting myself deeply would have meant sitting with the negativity along with the joy, the hardships, along with the gratitude, I was struggling in my relationships. I felt like I wasn't giving my all to my relationships. I felt that I struggled so much with getting to the depth that I wanted in my relationships. But I refused to sit with that too, right? Except when it came up in my head, I was like, oh, you're not being a great friend right now. You're not showing up the way that you want to show up. You're not responding the way that you respond. I pushed that away and I ignored it. And now I'm sitting here realizing like, oh, I was fine last year, sure. And this isn't something that came up in my relationships. None of my friends were saying this to me, but I'm realizing I could have been better. And I want to be better for the people that I love. I want to show up better. I want to love them and choose them and help them and serve. Like, I want to do all of those things better. But in order to do that this year, I need to do that for myself first. And so that's what my goal is for this year, to show up to myself, to meet myself deeply, no matter what that means, to meet the full range of my experience deeply, to not only make room for the joy, but make room for all of it, because all of it deserves to be acknowledged. All of it deserves to be seen and cared for. And by acknowledging that I experience pain sometimes or sadness sometimes, that just by acknowledging that I experience that doesn't mean that I'm putting it on a pedestal and worshiping it, that I'm calling more into my life. I would say it's quite the opposite, because if I can sit with these things when they arise, the negative emotions that come up when they arise, I can understand what is triggering it. I can understand what is causing it, what is making me feel that way, and take the steps to remove those things, those stressors, those hurtful things out of my life, because those don't have a place there. You see the difference? Like, my emotions always should have a place with me. How I feel should always feel safe coming up in my body. But the things that cause deep hurt, deep anxiety, deep pain do not have a place here. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle that I've been missing for a really long time. I'm really excited to do that for myself this year. I think that I deserve that. I know actually that I deserve that. I know that I deserve to actually seek to understand myself, understand what causes my joy, what causes my pain, what causes me to be a good friend and to not be a great one, right? I want that for myself. And as I said, I do believe that this started as an act of self-preservation. I wanted better for myself so bad that I refused to acknowledge what wasn't leading to that. I don't think that goal was accomplished, because if I had actually acknowledged what was taking me away from the better that I wanted, I wouldn't be going into the same patterns, doing the same things, believing the same narratives over and over. Because if I had just sat with what's taking me away from the abundance that I wanted, I would have been able to pinpoint exactly what needs to be removed rather than guessing. It was like I was playing this really big guessing game with myself in 2024. And while goodness came out of it, the inability to process any of it has been an issue for me. And now it feels like it's all coming over me, like it's all flooding through me, all the stuff that I've pushed away and suppressed. I finally looked at myself and said, every part of you has a place here. All of what you feel has a place here. You don't have to be happy all of the time to be safe here. You don't have to be positive all the time to be safe here. And it's funny enough because I struggled with that so much, except I didn't think it was coming from myself. I thought it was coming from the people who watch me and listen to me. I thought that that's something that you all had expected of me, and it's not in the slightest. No one has ever said, oh, no more negativity. Oh, no more sadness. Oh, no more reality of the human experience. But I projected that onto you guys because I refused to meet it for myself. That belief was coming from deep within me. And the projection of it onto you, I still didn't make me realize where it was coming from, because the proof was right in front of me. No one was saying that. Even here when I wrote, like, Alex has given me such a long rope to change, but I feel like that rope is going to run out. It's not something he has ever said or given me the inclination that could be true. It's like I've been projecting this fear onto everyone in my life, and I have not looked in the mirror long enough to realize the call was coming from quite literally inside the house. But now I know, and the knowing better is what leads me to doing better. But I refuse to guilt myself or shame myself because I did something that I thought was protecting me. I was trying. But the problem would be if I acknowledged this and kept going down the same road. Now that I've acknowledged it, it's my obligation to do better. It goes back to what I was saying about love. Because I love myself, I now have to choose to do better for myself. And by doing better for myself, by loving myself better, I'm going to be able to get what I've been wanting out of my relationships. And I'm so excited about that. And so all of this has led me to the realization that my priority needs to be following the thread. When something comes up, follow that thread instead of pushing it away. Something is making me feel upset, it's making me feel anxious, it's making me feel afraid in any way. Follow the thread. What is it about the situation I'm in or afraid of that's making me respond that way? And on the flip side, what excites me? What lights me up? What motivates me? What captivates me? Follow that thread. I think by allowing myself to chase what's coming up in me, I'm going to get the depth that I wanted. I'm going to unlock that door that I feel like has been blocking me from the next step for so long. For example, when I was feeling last night, like I know that this year was incredible, but I can't process it. I can't sit with it. Something about that is really difficult for me. Instead of just pushing that away, I just started writing about it. I just got it out there. And that allowed me to tap into something creative that I've been missing. And I really struggled with writing because writing is where I've always gone to meet myself deeply. So if I'm not allowing myself to meet myself deeply, how was I writing? And the reality was I was not. Every time I would sit down to write, I would feel as if it was coming out jumbled and confused and just not articulate at all. Not that your writing has to be articulate if it's for you, right? But I just felt like I wasn't making sense of anything I was saying. And it's because I was only trying to focus on and extract the goodness from everything, when there's a whole half of my lived experience that I wasn't allowing myself to draw from. So my writing wasn't coming out. I felt like there wasn't a lot of depth in the things that I was saying because I only wanted to just touch on, the negativity, but really wrap it up in a neat, pretty bow to put out there. And like I said, it's when I'm only experiencing things to repackage them and share them, but not to notice, not to sit with, not to just allow to build upon my past experiences to create new ones, I'm not actually learning or processing anything. I'm excited to see who I become this year when I'm not putting such strict restrictions on what I'm allowed to feel and what I'm allowed to think and what I'm allowed to sit with. And that's not to say negativity and pain is going to overcome me. I think it's quite the opposite. When I allow myself to acknowledge the bad and chase the good, I think that's where the real magic and the growth and the development is going to happen. And I am so excited to not only realize that for myself, but be able to share that with you guys. But like I was saying earlier, I think that there's so much out there about only focus on the good. If you think good, you attract good. But the reality is every day is not good. And there's a difference in ruminating on negativity and just acknowledging it. So now I'm focused on following all of the threads, not just the good ones. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to actually remember how I felt in certain situations, actually remember how things affected me, because I look through my journal and it's like full of all of the best days of my life, but what about the bad ones too? What did I learn from the rejections? What did I learn from the pain? What did I learn from the hardships? It's moving away from Denver. Like, I feel like I am just now allowing myself to process it. And I moved in September. And just now, as in like today, actually sitting with that move and actually sitting with the Irish goodbye that I did years of my life. Like, that was kind of insane. Like, okay, so what was it about that made you feel as if you had to leave in that way, leave so quickly, leave without saying full articulate goodbyes? Or like, what was it? And I realize now I was bolting like Miss Swift said in The Bolter from TTPD. I was bolting. And now's the time to acknowledge what made me bolt. And when I can acknowledge what made me bolt, it helps me not feel like I have to do that again, because I don't want to do that again. I don't want to feel as if I suppress so much and then one day I snap and have to make quick changes on a whim. Not that moving or buying a house was necessarily a whim, but actually in part I think that it was. And I do deserve to sit with that too. It is the reality of my life, not this fabricated reality that I'm trying to convince myself to believe. And that's not to say I'm not manifesting. That's not to say I'm not hoping. That's not to say that I don't want so many incredible things, but I think that all of those things that I want are behind me acknowledging the truth that I live in. And so that is what I have for you guys today. And maybe you guys will join me in that. Maybe you guys are ready to meet yourselves deeply. Maybe you didn't even realize that you weren't doing it. And now this is opening up a lot of processing for you. And I do want to acknowledge that processing can be heavy and it can be hard, but that's exactly what we're trying to get to, right? The heavy and the hard deserves to be worked through and acknowledged as well. And I hope that you don't walk away from this episode feeling negative or feeling down, right? It's not about that. I think that there's joy in reminding yourself that it is okay to feel everything, to acknowledge everything, and to work through all of it without such strict restrictions on what that has to be. So, thank you for joining me this week. And I'm so excited to see what this podcast becomes when it doesn't have to be so steeped in silver linings, right? When it's just the truth of it all. So that is what I have for you. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next week on the podcast, or I will see you on Instagram or TikTok. All of that is below in the show notes. And I love you so much, and I am on your side. Mwah.